Hey guys, welcome back to the Mountaintop 9 podcast, and now we're moving along to 1988. What are my top horror picks from that year? And we got to get one thing out of the way. When it comes to 1988, this is the year where you see a lot of the, what I want to call, geek horror films. I mean, these are the movies that every nerd that goes to a horror convention, they know these movies. We're talking stuff like Pumpkinhead and Night of the Demons and Halloween 4 and Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Have you ever seen a movie that has just grown in cult status over the years as Killer Clowns from Outer Space? I want to touch on that one real quick because when I was a kid, I loved that movie. The first time I saw that one, that scene at the beginning where you've got Royal Dano. That's the name of the actor. I don't know if you say his last name Dano or Dano, but I know one thing. He's shown up in various things over the years. I've seen him in stuff like Messiah of Evil. He's in that one briefly. And then if you watch the show Little House on the Prairie, I've seen him in episodes of that. But anyway, he's this crusty old guy. Well, at the beginning of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, he's walking his dog, and his dog's name is Pooh Bear. And when that clown comes and pulls him in that net, he starts screaming, "What have you done to my dog? What have you done to my Pooh Bear? Give me back my dog." That part's really funny. I like that part a lot. But anyway, the first time I saw Killer Clowns from Outer Space, that came out, I was about 5 years old when that one came out, and I loved it. Great movie, taped it. I remember me and my cousin at the time, we fought over who was going to get the first taping of it when it aired on HBO or whatever. One of the times HBO replayed it, we were ready to tape it, all right? And I wanted it on tape for myself, my own, videotape, whereas she wanted to tape it and have her own tape of it. And the funny thing is I'm the true horror fan here. I'm the one still to this day at 40 years old talking about these fucking movies and got posters of them and I collect them. I live for this shit. I love it. It's a part of my life. Whereas, do you think she even remembers that now? Does she give a fuck about horror? No. I was the one, and guess what? I got the first taping back then, which is justified in my opinion, because like I just said, I'm the one that's still into this shit to this day. I'm the one that truly loves these movies. But anyway, yeah, Killer Clowns, it's a cult favorite now, and now every Halloween when you walk into a Spirit Halloween or some kind of store like that, you see the merchandise has gone crazy for this movie, and that's all part of the fact that clowns have just blown up as far as being this scary thing. Everyone's afraid of clowns. It's such a popular thing now. You've got Pennywise from It. You've got that movie Terrifier. That American Horror Story had a season where they had a clown killer. And, you got stuff like Killer Clowns from Outer Space as well. It's just a popular cult type thing. I don't even know, can you even call it a cult hit now? It's so famous now. And then you guys know how much I liked Hellraiser 2. I've talked about it before. The thing with Hellraiser 2 is I love that gore scene. I love that bloody scene where the guy is taking the razor and he's cutting himself repeatedly and he's saying, "Get them off me." When he's hallucinating that he's got, bugs and maggots all over him. That scene is so cool. To this day, it's just so brutal seeing that guy slice himself repeatedly and seeing all the blood go all over that mattress. That's the thing about Hellraiser 2. That one's pretty sick. As long as you're watching the unrated cut of Hellraiser 2, it's a pretty brutal and sick movie. I think I may like Hellraiser 2 better than the first one, honestly. We've also got stuff like Halloween 4 that came out that year. The funny thing about Halloween 4 and 5 is I remember around the time those movies were coming out, because Halloween 4 was in 88 and then Halloween 5 was in 89. I remember seeing the ads in the newspapers when they come out, and when it got to Halloween 5, I remember thinking to myself, didn't they just release one of these things just a few months ago? It was just so funny how close those two were released together. But Halloween 4, just speaking strictly about it, I've always been a fan of that one because, first of all, I will give a criticism. It could have had more blood. I think it could have been more violent. I wish there would have been bloodier death scenes, but of course, at this period of time in the 80s, the MPAA were really harsh on horror films, especially slasher movies. Those seem to be the ones they came down hardest on. So all of the scenes of violence in Halloween 4, they're super quick. You know that whole Friday the 13th trick, once you got to especially Friday 13th part 6 and 7 and 8, you know how in those movies, whenever there'd be a death scene, they cut it down super quick. If you were going to see anything, it was going to be super quick, over in a flash. It's almost subliminal that your mind would register the scenes of bloodshed. Well, Halloween 4 is like that, you know. One thing I don't like in slasher movies, and Halloween 4 is guilty of this. You started to get these scenes where you would have a character like Michael Myers where he'd take his fucking hand and he'd like dig his thumb into someone's forehead. Shit like that. I'm not really into that. I'd rather see a killer in a movie. I'd rather see him take a fucking knife and jab it right through someone's skull and out their eye socket. I'd rather see some shit like that. You know what I mean? That's brutal slasher death scene right there, is when you have someone stabbing someone in the head or cutting their throat or, taking an axe and fucking dismembering them. That's the kind of stuff I want to see in a slasher movie. I don't like this cop-out shit they started to do in Halloween and Friday the 13th movies where they would have the killer, where they'd have Jason or Michael Myers like crush someone's head with their hands or bash their head into a fucking pipe. I want to see an axe fucking cut someone's fucking head off in these movies. That's the kind of stuff I want to see. But it's probably all related to, like I said, how they had to keep the movies, the death scenes kind of, they couldn't be overly graphic. So that's kind of a symptom of that, why you'd have these what I call cop-out deaths where they just grab someone's head and bash it into a wall. It's not very imaginative if you ask me. But anyway, Halloween 4, the thing that it does get right is I think it establishes a good atmosphere at the beginning. I like the mood that it sets. It makes you feel like it's autumn. Okay, it does a good job of establishing that and getting you into the Halloween spirit. I also think it's beautifully shot. I like the way the movie looks. And, that ending is kind of a shocker. I thought that ending was pretty creepy when I was a kid, without spoiling the ending. But who the fuck hasn't seen Halloween 4? Are you really listening to this podcast and you've never seen Halloween 4? So I'm going to go ahead and just say that shot of the girl at the top of the stairs at the end of Halloween 4, that's some good stuff, man. Very effective. I like that. So anyway, another big movie that came out that year, I already touched on it briefly, Pumpkinhead. This is another type of movie, I think, not quite to the level of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, because that one has the whole clown motif, so that's why it's so heavily merchandised now and everyone loves it. But Pumpkinhead is another nerd horror movie. Go to any fucking convention and bring up Pumpkinhead. Everyone's going to nod in affirmative. They've seen it. They all love it. Personally, I think Pumpkinhead's just okay. The best factor about Pumpkinhead is that Lance Henriksen's in it. That's the best thing it's got going for it. Other than that, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I mean, who can deny? Those Stan Winston special effects, the creature effects, the way the monster looks, that's really cool and everything. But there's something about the pacing of Pumpkinhead. I've just never been a big fan of it. Now, moving along to another big movie, Return of the Living Dead 2. I loved this one as a kid. Has the slapstick and all the funny stuff. Has it aged well over time? Not so much. It's really cheesy. It's just not as good as Return of the Living Dead, the first one. The first Return of the Living Dead balanced the humor and horror very well. A seamless blend, in my opinion. That movie just worked really well. You had some grisly, violent scenes in that one, and then you had some funny quips here and there from the characters, but it was handled very well. You still felt the tenseness of the situation, how the characters are locked inside that mortuary and the zombies are all around them. It just worked really well in the first one. The second one It's got, you know, a lot of frantic energy to it, and it's paced very well. It's a good popcorn horror movie, basically, Return of the Living Dead 2. It's a fun one to watch with someone who's not like a hardcore horror fan, and they're going to get something out of it because it keeps it moving, man. You don't want to sit down with someone who's not into this stuff and put on Fulci's Zombie, for instance. You put on that movie, they might fall asleep. There's too many slow scenes in it, you know what I mean? You put on something like Return of the Living Dead and you say, check this out, they're going to watch it to the very end because it's fun, it's lighthearted. So, in that sense, Return of the Living Dead, it was a perfect movie for 1988. Is it one of my favorites from that year? No, not at all. But for your average person, it's a good movie for that year. It fits in with the time period very well because the whole, you know, humor and horror thing were going together hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly at the time. I mean, after all, 1988 is the year of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. Talk about a movie that was a pop culture phenomenon. This movie was just everywhere in 1988. You couldn't go to a video store without seeing a huge poster of the movie, and then you'd see the ads everywhere. I mean, for me, at this time in 88, Freddy was the biggest thing. So, of course, I love Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Have great memories of it. I've probably told this story before, but I will mention again. When this movie came out on video, I rented it from the video store down in town. And then when it was time to take it back, keep in mind, I was only 5 years old at the time. I was in kindergarten at this time. And I was living at my grandmother's house. And anyway, I hid the videotape of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 under the couch. I tried to hide it. I didn't want to return the movie. But of course they ended up finding it and taking it back. But it wasn't long after that they showed it on TV. I think Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I'm pretty sure it premiered on something like Showtime or the Movie Channel. I'm pretty sure it wasn't HBO that it premiered on. And anyway, when it premiered, we taped it. And of course I watched it over and over and over. So yeah, love Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and of course that would, I guess you would consider that the ultimate nerd horror movie of 1988. I mean, I think it's bigger than any of these, really. You also had Friday the 13th Part 7. I love the design of Jason. This is one of the most celebrated renditions of how Jason looks. I mean, they've got this whole rotting look to him. You can see his spine coming out his back when he rises out of the water. Just really cool stuff, but this is the one that's just heavily cut. You know, every death scene, they should be really grisly, but of course they had to cut all of the, you know, excessive scenes of violence, had to cut them right out of the movie, so the movie feels neutered. And so that's the only thing with Friday the 13th Part 7. Other than that, it's really good. Now, another one that I want to mention real quick from 1988, I just want to throw it out there and give a couple thoughts about it, is Night of the Demons. I love the intro to this movie, to Night of the Demons. I love the mood that it gets you into. It really sets a mood of Halloween. Now, as far as Kevin Tenney directed movies are concerned, I do like Witchboard better than this movie, but Night of the Demons is decent fun, and it's, you know, it's another one that's like a horror fan favorite. I remember when Anchor Bay put this one out on DVD. I snatched it up as soon as they put it out, so you know, that's another good, solid movie. I need to mention again, 1988 is just very heavy with noteworthy horror movies. I have a list here. I had to write down so many titles because as I was thinking about it, I was like, man, 1988 really has a lot of popular horror flicks that you just have to mention. There's so many movies from that year that I have to touch on. Now, am I mentioning every single movie? No. I had to narrow it down to a few, but geez Louise, there are just so many horror films from 1988. Now, moving along to a couple really good, gross out horror movies that if you want to check out that will really get under your skin. One is called Slugs, and the other is called The Nest. If you want to see two really gross horror movies with nice special effects, then Slugs and The Nest, you can't go wrong with either one of those. Those are good horror movies as far as that is concerned. And if you want a couple cheesy slashers from that year, Iced and Evil Laugh. Can't miss either one of those. Now we're going to get into my top 5 of the year, and I'm going to tell them to you not really in any specific order. I will save the one that I like best for last, though. The one that I rank above all the others, my very favorite, I will save for last, but the rest of these are in no particular order. First of all, let's talk about Child's Play. I went and saw this movie in the theater, and I didn't know what to expect, because in the TV spots that they were showing at the time, they didn't show, at least the ones I saw, they didn't show Chucky. Okay, they kept that a mystery in the TV spots that I saw. They didn't show Chucky, so I didn't know it was about a doll coming to life. All I knew was that it was a horror movie, and my grandma and I, we both kept seeing this TV spot, and it really intrigued us. I wanted to see this movie, Child's Play. So my grandma and my aunt, they took me, and we went to the mall, and we saw Child's Play. And I remember before we even walked into the theater to sit down, the guy that looked at our tickets, he said something about, you'll never want to buy a doll again, or something like that. He said something like that, and we didn't know what he meant, all right? Still didn't know that it was about a doll, or at least I didn't. So when we went in and saw this movie, when Chucky first came to life and you heard Brad Dourif's voice and he starts talking and he starts calling this woman a fucking bitch and everything under the sun and hitting her with his little hands, I was amazed. I couldn't believe the shit that I was seeing, the stuff that was coming out of this doll's mouth, all the cussing and the attacking and everything else. I was amazed at this movie, and I loved it. So I was a big fan of Child's Play. And then, of course, when Child's Play 2 came out and Child's Play 3, I loved those entries as well. It was when they got to that Bride of Chucky shit and everything that came after. Not a fan of that shit, man. I'm a fan of the first 3 Child's Play movies, and the first one is a solid horror movie. It's handled very well, and when they get to that ending, it has a really somber music piece at the end of the movie when you see Andy Barclay looking back into that room through the doorway or whatever, and you hear that music piece come on. It's just very sad. It's very haunting. Got a haunting quality to it. But Child's Play, that first one, it hits all the marks. It's just like Return of the Living Dead or something like that, in the sense that it's the original movie in a franchise, and it balances the elements correctly. It doesn't go too far with the jokes and shit like that. You've got Chucky really chewing through some scenery and cussing people out and shit and threatening people and gesticulating and all this shit, but it doesn't go like overboard. It's not the cheesy kind of fucking humor you get in Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky and all that crap. So yeah, man, the first Child's Play was a big favorite of mine at the time. When I was a kid, if I was making this list back when I was 5 years old, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Child's Play, and Friday the 13th Part 7 would probably be my top 3, because, it had you got Freddy there, you got Jason, you got Chucky, and of course I loved Hellraiser 2, which had Pinhead. These were my big heroes when I was 5 years old. But, now that I'm a grown man, I got to keep Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Friday the 13th Part 7 out of the top 5. I wouldn't put them in the top 5 as far as overall quality, even though I still, love the movies. But Child's Play, on the other hand, to this day, all right, at this very moment in my life, I would still put it in the top 5 because I feel like it balances many elements together in a good way, and it's a solid horror film. So, yeah, Child's Play, gotta love that one. Who doesn't? What's your problem if you do? So, moving along, let's talk about Sleepaway Camp 2. I love the first Sleepaway Camp. It's a good horror film with a shocking ending. When Angela's growling there, holding that knife and holding that head. What a powerful ending sequence to Sleepaway Camp 1. And I'm sorry if you never saw that. But once again, why have you not seen the first Sleepaway Camp? What is wrong with you? I mean, seriously, come on, man. You got to get with it. If you haven't seen Sleepaway Camp, I don't know what can I do? What can I do? How the fuck can I help you if you haven't seen that? But we're talking about Sleepaway Camp 2, so let's not get off on a tangent. Sleepaway Camp 2 goes really far in the humor aspect. It's an over-the-top, cheesy slasher movie, but very fun. And this bitch, Angela, is killing people at a rate in this movie. I swear to God, the body count is through the fucking roof. She's just knocking people off one after another. The thing I really like about Sleepaway Camp 2 and Sleepaway Camp 3 is even though they're not high on originality, they deliver exactly what the audience of that time period wanted. Okay? They have a heavy metal type of atmosphere to them. It's fun, it's a frantic pace, the body count is high, and there's very little downtime in either one of these movies. Whether you can throw in Sleepaway Camp 2 or 3 and you're not going to have a dull moment. They just keep the entertainment value coming. Let's talk about a movie called Scarecrows. Scarecrows, to me, is a very I remember the first time I watched it, I actually checked out Scarecrows for the first time. I was about 18 or 19 years old, so it was one that I watched later in life. All right, I didn't watch it when it initially came out. And when I rented this movie, I didn't go into it with high hopes or anything. I hadn't really heard anything about it. And so when I watched it for the first time, I thought, man, this is a very taut, suspenseful film. I mean, it really drags you in, and it has a dark atmosphere to it, and it's very mysterious. You know, the first time you watch this movie, Scarecrows, you don't know what's animating them. You don't know what's bringing them to life and causing them to kill. And as I've watched the movie a few more times over the years, I've realized, you know, this is a very demonic movie. It's not overt what is driving these scarecrows to kill off this cast. You don't really know. They kind of leave that as kind of an underlying thing, and you've kind of got to watch the movie and soak up the atmosphere. And with repeated viewings, you kind of get little clues here and there what's really going on behind the scenes, what's making these scarecrows want to murder everybody in the movie. Some people may think the acting is hammy, you know, like the actors are hamming it up, but I like that. It reminds me of Day of the Dead. You know, in Day of the Dead, how you have the character played by Joe Pilato. That character is very, he's like trying to order the other characters around. He's got this balls to the wall, authoritative attitude. He's cussing everyone out and telling them what they're going to fucking do, or else he's going to put his boot right up their ass. Well, you've got a character in Scarecrows that's just like that, man. He's the one driving the fucking show, and he's cussing everyone out. Scarecrows has that element. It reminds me of that Day of the Dead type feeling. And so that's a fun aspect of the movie. And it's got some grisly deaths in it as well. I mean, it's not like a Fulci flick. Don't put this on expecting to see the beyond, all right? You're not going to see a dog tear someone's jugular out and see blood flowing out like in a crimson river. Nothing to that extent, but this movie does have good 80s special effects, a taut, suspenseful feel, and good acting, in my opinion. So definitely check Scarecrows out. I think it's a real gem of 1988. Okay, now moving along to my final two. Blood Relations, I have to mention. It is one that I highly recommend to anyone who wants to watch a movie with a cold atmosphere. Here I am sitting and recording this podcast here right now in the middle of January. It's freezing where I'm at. It's very cold out. And if you were to ask me what kind of movie to watch in that type of setting on a cold winter night, well, Blood Relations is a perfect movie for that kind of atmosphere. You've got this mansion set out in an isolated setting. This guy, he's marrying this girl, or he's just met this girl. I can't remember if she's his girlfriend or he's gonna marry him, but whatever the case, it's his significant other, and he brings her out to the family mansion where his father lives. Well, throughout this movie, the man and his father, they keep playing tricks on this woman and making her question, you know, what the fuck is going on? It's very mysterious. She can't get to the bottom. I mean, what is going on? These guys play like the cruelest tricks on each other. The movie keeps you guessing until the very end. All right, guys, do you want to know what my top horror movie of 1988 is? Well, I'll tell you right now. That movie is Ghost House, directed by Umberto Lenzi. This one was filmed at the same house that they shot House by the Cemetery. You know the Lucio Fulci classic from the early 80s? You know that house that they used in the movie? Well, Ghost House uses that same house. And the thing that's great about that is that house has the perfect look to it. I mean, you just look at that house and it screams horror movie. You know what I mean? It just has the perfect look to it. It's so ominous. It has an evil aura about it. So already right there, you've got a winning start by having that house in the movie. And then this movie has a demonic girl and a little demonic clown doll that she has. And there are grisly death scenes in this one with throat slashings, and you got eyes coming out of the sockets. The score to this movie is a great 80s horror film score. It helps establish the mood and keep a creepy atmosphere. And then there's this nursery rhyme motif that keeps repeating throughout the film with this weird voice, and it just loops throughout the film. And whenever you hear it, you know some grisly scene of carnage is soon to follow. Ghost House is the kind of movie that it would probably creep out your average person that's not really into horror. If you put this one on late at night and they see that clown doll, it's a creepy looking clown, kind of similar to the clown that they used in Poltergeist. In fact, it may be the same one with slight alterations. I don't know off the top of my head right now, but I do know it's very similar to that clown doll in the first Poltergeist. But anyway, yeah, man, Ghost House is just a great movie. I still remember the first time I rented Ghost House from West Coast Video. I was in high school at the time. I was probably maybe 16 or 17, might have been 15. It was somewhere in there. I was working at Rax at the time. Have you ever heard of Rax? It's a roast beef place, just like Arby's. Do you like roast beef sandwiches? I'll tell you what. I don't mean to get off on a long rant here, but I love a good roast beef sandwich from Arby's. My preferred way of eating them is I get a good roast beef sandwich and I put some horseradish on there and nothing better. And anyway, when I was in high school, when I was 16 years old, it was right when I turned 16, I got my first real job working at Rax Restaurants or Rax Roast Beef, whatever the fuck they were called. I just called it Rax. And anyway, that was my first job, and we served roast beef sandwiches, and they were just like the ones you get at Arby's. There was no difference, all right? We had the roast beef, and you had the curly fries, but at Rax, we called them twisty fries. But they were the same fucking thing, the seasoned fries. And then we had regular fries as well. But my favorite thing were the roast beef sandwiches, and I liked the regular roast beef that I'd put horseradish on, but I also liked the roast beef deluxe that we had, or the King Racks. Now that one was made on a long bun and it had the roast beef, but it also had lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise. All right, so that one was made different, and I loved a good roast beef sandwich made that way as well. But anyway, nowadays there are no more Racks, or if there is a Racks, I don't know where the fuck it is. The place just doesn't exist anymore, to tell you the truth. And so the only way you can get roast beef anymore is you got to go to Arby's. So I like to go to Arby's, and most of the time I just get my roast beef plain, and then I'll put horseradish on it. But sometimes I'll have them throw some of their Swiss cheese on. I'll have them throw a slice of Swiss, and then I'll put some horseradish on. But anyway, getting off of Arby's, all right, and Rax, let's get back to when I rented Ghost House for the first time from West Coast Video. That's where I rented it from. And just loved the movie. Just a fun movie. And like I said, it's a haunted house movie. So you've got that creepy atmosphere of a haunted house type picture and that kind of demonic element going on. But in Ghost House, it's an Italian horror film made by Umberto Lenzi. So you've got some good gore in here. You've got some blood. You've got nice carnage. It's not some wimpy haunted house movie like the first Amityville or something like that. You know, I'm just trying to compare it to a haunted house type movie that doesn't have grisly death in it. Ghost House is similar to the movie Superstition. That's another haunted, you know, ghostly horror movie that has grisly death in it. Well, Ghost House is similar to that in that vein. So yeah, guys, those are all my horror picks for 1988 that I wanted to talk about. And gosh, man, I gotta tell you, the reason why this recording is so long is because just think about it. So many horror movies came out in 1988. Even though I don't think it's like the best year, like, 1988 doesn't have movies like Maniac or The Shining or City of the Living Dead or, anything like that. It doesn't have movies or Nightmare. It doesn't have movies that rise to that level. I mean, obviously, I love those movies more, and those movies are from the early 80s. But as far as pound for pound, just the quantity of horror that came out in 1988, man, it's a ton of. I didn't even mention all of them, but yeah, man, just so many from 1988. It was a solid year for horror as far as quantity is concerned, and there's plenty of quality in there as well. But one thing you'll notice is a lot of the movies have a similar feel to them. There's a frantic energy. There's a pop culture kind of popcorn theater, fast paced to a lot of these movies. But still, you've got some darker elements in movies like Scarecrows and Ghost House and so on. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to this one. And let me know your favorites as far as 1988 is concerned. And guess what, guys? I'll be talking to you again really, really soon.